Richard is an old brain scientist. The question of whether we need a non-physical component to make consciousness out of brain has been something that's obsessed me my whole life. As the decades have gone on, more and more neuroscientists, even some theologians, are saying we do not need such non-physical component. What is your view?
I certainly think we do. If you're to describe the whole history of the world, you must describe not merely what happens to the bits of this body, but what me am aware of. It's one truth that that certain things are happening to neurons in my brain, but it's another truth that I am aware of certain things, and these are connected with each other. But let's give you. There are different empirical arguments that can be given for this, but here's one. The brain consists of two hemispheres, left hemisphere, right hemisphere, joined by a main tract, the corpus callosum. There have been patients in which the corpus callosum has been severed. Those patients behave in most ways completely normally, but in a certain way they don't behave completely normally. Suppose you fixate them, that's to say you make them stare straight ahead and put a screen such that each eye is can look either side of the screen. And then you flash some signal from the right-hand side to them so that it lands on the right side of each eye. This signal is then transmitted to the left side of the brain, and what you find is that if you ask the patient what this signal was, it might say you might show them something. You might show them a key, and you ask them, well, what did you see? They can only give you the answer by means of the limbs or of the mouth under the control of this hemisphere, so that, and that means the things on the right side of the body. So if you show them a key on this side, you say, what do you see? They can write key with their right hand. But if you ask them to tell you with their left hand what they could see, they can't tell you, and conversely for signals from the other side. Now, that's suggested to people, well, what's going on? And one explanation of what's going on is that by severing the corpus callosum, you've created two centers of consciousness. There's, say, two people who are aware of, one person's aware of the signals from this side, the other person's aware of the signal from that side. And of course, when you don't fixate them, when you remove the screen, they get the signals from both sides, and so they don't show any difference of behavior. Well, that's one explanation, but there are other explanations of what's happening. One explanation might be that one of these hemispheres is simply unconscious and is giving its answers on automatic pilot, but is not aware of anything. And clearly we operate quite a lot of the time on automatic pilot. I might drive along a road talking about philosophy and simply respond automatically to the signals. And so the left brain might respond automatically to the key ring by writing key. So it may be that only one of these hemispheres is conscious, and it might be this one, it might be that one. Another explanation is that there might still be only one person in control of the two hemispheres, but the effect of what you've done means that that person can only express certain bits of knowledge in a certain way. They can only express what comes in this way through the right hand and what comes in this way through the left hand. So there's a number of hypotheses equally compatible with the data. And these hypotheses are hypotheses about how many people there are. So the mere fact that you have an organized brain doesn't tell you anything about how many people there are in control of this brain. This is a further thing. And clearly it's a thing about whether there is a person or not. And this is, since it can't be a thing solely about the physical, because we know everything about the physical, it must be something about something non-physical. And therefore, the only possible explanation of why we are ignorant, it's our ignorance about how many people there are, and the fact that it clearly is a fact about how many people there are, since it isn't a fact about the physical, it must be a fact about the non-physical, suggests that what's happening is my soul is separate from the brain with which it's to contact. When the corpus callosum is severed, we don't know what happens to my soul, but of course we don't know what happened to immaterial things, so that's not a problem. And it may be that separating the corpus callosum does indeed create two souls, or perhaps it leaves only one in control. We can explain our ignorance because it's an ignorance about the non-physical, but if all of the truths were about the physical, we would know the answer, and that suggests that we must explain the human condition in terms of two parts.
I think that's a fascinating argument. However, from just looking at it physically, if we have the different experience from different parts of the brain when the corpus callosum is cut, one might think, that if there is some non-physical component, it wouldn't be limited of which side of the brain it was associated with, and that soul should know both sides of the brain.
Oh, well, why one should think that at all? Of course, it will know both sides of the brain if the corpus callosum is operative, because signals that arrive here will be transmitted to there. But if the brain is cut, then it may be it's simply associated with one or simply associated with the other.
So this non-physical element, this soul, sort of has a one-to-one correspondence?
Well, it's got to operate somewhere. I mean, it doesn't operate over the whole body. It operates over certain parts of the brain, and there are different theories about which part, in the normal person, about which part of the brain, as it were, is conscious, is the locus of consciousness. And one theory is that it's just the cortex that is conscious. Another theory is that it's the brainstem that's conscious. So, any rate, without all these phenomena, you have to say that certain parts of the brain are responsible for consciousness. And therefore, it's not going to be an extraordinary theory if you say, well, it's the cortex, but it's only this part of the cortex that would be within the normal sort of operative operations of neurophysiology. But when you my point is that we don't know which part of the brain is the conscious part when we go through this operation of severing the corpus callosum. And that, since we don't know where consciousness operates, but there is a truth about how many people there are, that truth must be something about something else.
What about other evidence in terms of the existence of a soul? There is evidence from so-called parapsychological, paranormal, occultic, ESP type activities.
I have no views on that. Such evidence as I've seen is pretty weak, I think.
There's evidence from religious experience in terms of suggesting some non-physical relation. The evidence you've presented for the existence of a soul or a non-physical component is very much an analysis of the physiology and the expression of physiology.
That's right. I think you don't need to bring God into this at all. This is simply to give a full description of the data, because the data are that people have thoughts, that people have feelings, that people have the desires. And because any knowledge of the brain won't tell you how many people have feelings, desires, and so on, or which people have feelings, desires, and so on, this must be a further fact. And since it's not a fact about the brain, it must be a fact about something else. You don't need to bring religion into this at all. So, in summary, my claim is that however much you know about the physical world, you won't know how many people there are. And therefore, being a person isn't a truth about the physical world. It's a truth about something immaterial in causal connection with the physical world, which in odd circumstances we won't know how many of these there are.